Absolutely.
Great. We in the green room? Awesome. Super. Listen, Ruta will be in, anybody that lives in, welcome to the green room, everybody. Listen, if you live in Southwest Florida, there's only two ways to go north and south. It's Route 41 or, of course, Interstate 75. Anything that happens on either of them can cause delays. So she'll be in. But listen, the green room today, behind me, the moving parts of Cannabis 2024. But I really want to start first because it is the commemoration of D-Day. So I was getting ready to come into work today. 80 years, everybody, 80 years, which is crazy because those veterans now that are still there, that survived that day, what else have they survived, right? And they're now, they have to be 100, I guess if you were 18 and just fresh, but unbelievable lives. And just to think about them and commemorate them. And we just had Memorial Day, of course, and Veterans Day. We always try to think about our veterans and, not specifically just to cannabis, of course, but for everything. So really want to give a shout out to each and every one of those of us who have served and have fought for freedom. Being 68 as I am, I just missed it. My brother was literally in like the last year of the lottery all the way back then. And, I was never drafted to serve, as I always told my veteran patients in the ER world. Absolutely. If I would have been called, I would have served. I would have served, I hope, with honor and with courage. And I think we ignore that these days. I often talk about what I would love to see every kid at 18 do 2 years of public service, be it military, Peace Corps, inner city, hospital work, go teach, I don't know, whatever. And then you can grow a little bit more. I love that 2-year gap year theory. And then I think you turn your cell phones in too for the first 3 months. So they mix all these kids up and, get them off the social media and everything. And then, listen, you come back, parents get 2 years worth of college, community college. And then those kids at age 22 can decide what the heck they want to do and then go to Ohio State's main campus. And they're a little bit more grown up. And, I don't know, it just seems to be like the 22 would seem to be the new 18, if not the 68 being the new 48. Anyway, but that's me. So all the moving parts behind me just kind of point out what I like to say is going on in the cannabis space right now in 2024, because we just came from the FMCCE conference this past weekend. Want to give a big shout out to Gene Jones, who organized it, and really all the doctors there, and a lot of interest, of course, in all the moving parts this year, be it the Constitutional Amendment 3, which would call for the legalization and the possession of marijuana in the state of Florida. They call it marijuana, so we'll call it cannabis in general, of course. And then we have, of course, the federal Schedule 1 and Schedule 3 designation going on at the federal level. And when you put all those moving parts together, it's just such an interesting time. I tell everybody that, and I hope I'm not repeating this from last week's, it could have been last week's green room. Listen, I want to give a big shout out. Tiffany's behind the computers there to remind me if I've already told the stories once. But I want to give a shout out to Don Murphy, who was on last week's show, which was really unique. He is the national lobbyist up there in Washington, D.C., comes out of more the conservative side of the battle in the past, but saw how, once again, getting back to our veterans, how veterans were affected by the insane cannabis policies in the country, especially at the federal level, So he's up there doing his thing, but what a great show. But so I don't think I told the story last week, but it's really what I discuss with my patients each and every day is my personal four-legged stool that I have right now in my life, which consists of sports, which is my sandbox, politics, which is just pervasive these days, healthcare, which has been my entire life, and cannabis, the medicine of cannabis in general. But I won't say that's been my life either, but it's been a consistent factor, let's put it that way, since I went, to Ohio State all the way back in, 1974. But the point is, if you look at And yesterday was such a strange day in the clinic. I'm telling you, Tiff, if I saw 25 patients yesterday, 20 of them were between the age somehow of 65 and 70. It just lined up that way. So I'm talking to my contemporaries all day, every day about how our lives have changed for each of those four, stools and or pegs on the stool. And, to me, the easiest is my Indians are not the Indians, they're the Guardians these days. And I don't want 25 teams in the Big Ten either, but I don't have, my choice over that. So sports have changed. And I got to give a shout out to my plucky Guardians. I hate rainouts. I had a rainout last night. It really bugged me. The second peg of the stool is interesting because it's healthcare in general, and we all know how that has changed from 10 years ago. That was pre-COVID. And the reason I like that one so much with my patients these days is that we do a lot of telehealth visits, of course. So with the telehealth visit, it's interesting because no one would have thought about doing that 10 years ago, right? So here we are with that. When you go into the ER, which was my 36-year career, you were seeing a doctor pretty much universally. Now, listen, you may be seeing a doctorate of nursing or a physician's assistant who has a doctorate. It's interesting and it's confusing for patients these days. And I'm not putting those providers down. Many of them are fantastic providers. But when you're a doctor, you do a 3-year residency, 5-year residency. There's an entirely different level of training and experience that goes with it. So healthcare has changed, but just the fact that we can do telehealth, and now, of course, with the federal Schedule 1 and Schedule 3 designation in cannabis, we're going to see that environment changing. And listen, as I like to say, I don't count on the insurance companies or big pharma coming in and doing anything good for a doctor, and or patient. I just think history proves that. So, we'll see. But, healthcare would be the second peg of that stool. Politics. And listen, since Ruta had, she's not here yet. I'm into the political thing. Let's talk about 10 years ago politics. And once again, just getting back to the D-Day, example of 80 years ago today, America was united. It was such a different era. And just the sacrifices that people made in that era for freedom, for democracy, whatever that. And I say I even slipped into it myself to the extent that now we're so divided in this country that it's hard to even know what democracy means. And I'm going to go there today, everybody. I live on Earth One. Earth One to me means that I still kind of believe in the principles that they were fighting for back in 1945, 1944. That's honesty and integrity and the rule of law, the belief in a shared value system. And it's so difficult in today's society because, Earth 2, and I got plenty of patients, that's for sure. I got friends and relatives that live over on Earth 2 who believe that America's broken. And that somehow our court system is just going after this one particular person. I will make the joke, and I apologize to those who don't appreciate the joke, but it was my joke last week. After Thursday, I had no baseball game, okay? But I love my 34-0 score. And I do believe that. I think when you put a jury of 12 Americans together, they're not New York Americans, they're not New York Democratic Americans, they're just Americans. And I think when there's a trial and you pick your jury and you give a chance to give your evidence, and then people deliberate honestly, with integrity, as former President Trump's lawyer said, he applauded the jury for their work. So the system's not broken. And it offends me to hear Marco Rubio compare our system to Cuba. If I get caught doing something wrong, I'm surely not going to be able to use that defense. And it just stuns me that nobody argues whether or not, although Trump himself does, whether he actually had the encounter with Stormy Daniels you know, which at its base is a 60-year-old with a 27-year-old adult film star at the time when his wife was pregnant or just had a child, whatever. I want my president to mean more, to have more, to stand for more. That's just me. And I don't think being a resident of Earth One to that extent right now is that big a faith. So I'll be honest with you, I don't understand Earth Two. And the Republican convention to me is going to be fascinating to watch balloons rain down on somebody that I just can't respect, just to the extent of the man and the person that he is. But to me, it's that right now the assault on our legal system and our trial system that I think we all count on, you know. And I don't know. To me, I just think it boils down to: do you want chaos, or do you want some degree of normalcy? You know, and I saw Grandpa Joe this morning, you know, shuffle out to give his speech, and there may be, and I don't make speculations as a 30-year emergency physician. I mean, when I'm 81, I hope I'm up there, out there doing my thing, going to France, giving speeches. And if I got to shuffle a little bit, maybe so. If he's got an early Parkinson's or this or that, I don't know. I mean, I don't see a lot of tremor necessarily. So I think he's doing okay. And I think the country's doing okay. Listen, I want to give another shout out to the FMCCE this past weekend in Orlando. It was really a good weekend. A lot of doctors there, and sponsored by Trulieve. And I want to give them a shout out for that, because they take it on the chin in a lot of circles. And just staying on the political side for a second, although in more of sense. So politics are different. We all know they're different. It's a source of stress for everybody. As I joke at the end of my visits with my patients, because now, as Tiff knows, because she makes the schedule, of course, and at the end of the visit, it's 210 days, of course. And I don't want to talk about the OMU rollout of the registry in the green room right now. It's a little fresh. They just did it yesterday, day before. We had a big doctor meeting last night, and I want to give credit to the OMU for the first time coming into our Wednesday night doctor meeting group to explain the rollout, to help the doctors through the, was there a glitch or two, Tiff? A glitch or two? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I will use the joke. I said I didn't want to use it up before the green room, but I did share with Tiff. If it was a drinking game last night, okay, either glitch or our production team, if those were the triggers, Tiff, it wouldn't take long before we'd be pretty drunk. And I don't think we'd be here this morning after the hangover from it.
Nope.
So as the moving parts go, but politics is just unrecognizable from 10 years ago. We need a shared truth. I hope we get there. I hope there's not disaster in this country that makes us get there. And I've always said that maybe, you know, somebody landing from above with 8 arms and 8 legs and 3 eyes, you know, would be the uniter for all of us. But, you know, that's just me. So the fourth peg of the stool, of course, you know, for me is cannabis. And now we'll get to what's in the background there, because listen, and I want to bring Trulieve back up for a second, because they really take it on the chin to the extent of, you know, many people in the advocate community. And it's crazy right now because there's so many things going on, because the governor might yet veto the hemp bill, which was that bill that was designed to clean up the, what I call the cannabinoid purveyor market, which are those not state regulated and tested hemp-derived Delta-9 products, smoke shop THCA pre-rolls, Delta-8 products, and things of that nature. And listen, there's some excellent purveyors of CBD and those other excellent minor cannabinoids, CBD, CBG, CBC. But we all know that the Farm Bill never really intended for there to be another intoxicating cannabinoid product out there without regulation. And before, you know, the hemp space jumps on me, I've always called for a state-centered lab to test all products sold on the shelves of Florida, no matter where they're sold, be it gas station, be it smoke shop, be it CBD store, be it formal MMTC, right? So that every Floridian knows that if they want to buy Delta-8, and that's their choice, that's actually what they're getting, and there's not leftover solvents and this and that and whatever's. But the governor may veto that bill, and that's kind of, once again, one of the kind of moving, you know, parts. to that extent. I didn't mind that for a second, Tiff. So right now, and it was interesting, just getting back to Trulieve, they take it on the chin, but they were the ones that sponsored the FMCCE as the primary sponsor and have led the state in education. And when Kim Rivers, okay, tells me, and she has, that she intends to protect medical, has every desire within her deepest, okay, desires to protect medical. I do believe her, because I've been with Kim on the march from the get-go about, developing this medical program. Sometimes things go out of control, on the other hand, that sometimes get beyond anybody's control when it comes to government and when it comes to conservative Florida legislative, decisions. So there are some risks with Amendment 3, but I want to circle back to the extent of the big shout out to Trulieve for continuing to lead the educational focus. But they had their booth at FMCCE, and they were handing out Amendment 3 pins, and many people were taking them. But I didn't see a lot of doctors taking the pins yet, because we need to make sure that we're protecting medical right now. There are some provisions in Amendment 3 that we're looking at very closely, to the extent of the original implementation that goes all the way back to 2017, calls for a sundowning, so to speak, of the medical program, unless it's re-implemented appropriately. And, I'm not a lawyer, and I don't play one on TV, and I've made that joke before in the green room. I do know that, Tiff, to the extent that I can only handle one of those heads. But, the point is, some attorneys, and we need good attorney opinions, but in reality, of course, I'm inclined to want to support Amendment 3, of course, because I do believe that nobody should be ever arrested over a plant. Don Murphy was in, last week. Once again, we discussed all kinds of things like that at length at the federal level. We know it's a state, issue, of course, as well. Schedule 3 is going to keep it as a drug, so to speak. So that's going to complicate things. And of course, even Amendment 3 itself calls for the legal possession of 3 ounces of cannabis and 5 grams of concentrates. How they're going to track that, what that means, we don't necessarily know. So that would be one of the moving parts, to the extent of however things come down. We know, okay, that should the citizens pass Amendment 3, and I guess I want to circle back, which is going to take 60%, but I want to finish up the thought that I had, because, and I don't read too much Facebook. I try to avoid it. Are they going to ban me for that, Tiff? I hope they're not, like, the Facebook police are not watching. But, when you look at the cannabis advocacy groups on Facebook, and it can be medical groups or just advocacy groups, people still want home grow and are still angry at Trulieve in the MMTC world for not having home grow contained within this particular constitutional amendment. And I just have to speak the truth to that, is that they can't have home grow within this particular constitutional amendment, because in Florida, it's single subject only. And it's been thrown out in the past when they've attempted to have too many things involved with it. So I wish there was another home grow initiative that would be there to support, especially for medical patients. But literally, to blame Trulieve and the MMTCs for that aspect of it isn't fair. And Trulieve specifically, and I know Verano and Move as well, were at the FMCCE, and they spoke to their embracing, quite frankly, of home grow. They would sell the clones. They're not afraid of it. If 100 people buy Roma tomatoes, then 2 people may grow their own in the backyard. So they know that. And it's not easy in Florida to grow high quality cannabis. So I don't think that's a reason, if you're an advocate and you're wanting to vote for Amendment 3, to blame the MMTCs for what you really can't have in Florida. It may come legislatively. I think if it does come legislatively, and this is just pure speculation on my part, it may come to medical patients first. to that extent. It may be another reason to keep your medical card. Listen, that's the big thing when it comes to the physician community, patients in the state who I speak to every day, of course, many of whom tell me that they're not going to vote for Amendment 3, and they have their reasons. Some have come from states where they've seen negative impact on their medical program. Some people just feel that everybody should take the same responsibility to get the education and make the commitment to get the card. And people appreciate, of course, the tax-free status. We'll get back to that in a second. But, there's many people that are going to be voting against it for any number of reasons that you would be surprised about. I tell each and every patient, vote your conscience, pay attention. And what our every bit of attention is being paid to is that we do preserve our medical program. To me, there's a big four, okay, when it comes to that. And it's interesting because Ron Watson, big shout out to him as well. He was also at FMCE, CCE, and was on a couple panels. Per Ron, what the polling shows, and it's interesting, you would think that price, of course, so keeping our taxes at zero isn't obvious, right? I mean, we don't know what the tax rate is going to be over on the recreational side. Legal adult use side, better way to put it, of course. But we know it's going to be taxed. It's going to be taxed at least at the sales tax level, and whatever amount of excise tax is put on that, and whether there's a local tax, who knows? It's hard to say. So money's easy. Quality, okay, is obvious, okay, to the extent of the importance, but also obvious to the extent of what you see in other states. And there's models for this already in Colorado. There's a 10 milligram edible available on the recreational side and a 50 milligram edible available on the medical side. Doesn't mean you can't buy 5 on the recreational side, but I would suspect it's probably going to cost about $40 or so, those 5 on the recreational side, so to speak, versus $12 over on the medical side. So, there's subtle differences, and hopefully, God forbid that they would put that potency difference on flower between the recreational and the medical program. People say, Doc, you're crazy. That would be great for your practice. And I say, listen, my practice is my practice, but that would be chaos. And I don't like chaos, as you heard before. But that would be chaos. And to me, would result in the legacy market continuing to thrive, of course. Not that I have any pretense that a well-fashioned legal adult use program will demolish the legacy market. Of course it won't, but it might make some degree of impact. And surely safety-wise is what I know that when I talk to people, be they medical or not, everybody wants safety. Everybody wants reliability. It's interesting. When I talk to patients about the legal adult use program, a lot of people don't understand that that's going to be a tested, state-regulated product as well. A lot of people think that all of a sudden, once it becomes "quote unquote" legalized for possession, that you can pretty much buy it from anybody, from anywhere. It's kind of interesting, and I think there is some confusion that kind of percolates over from the hemp space, so to speak, because there are those, Delta 9 THCA pre-rolls, and those vape carts that are, Delta 8, and all kinds of different things. So, it's interesting. It used to be so easy, talk that I know I, joked about, in the green room of the past. So the point is about that fourth leg of the stool, just getting back to the analogy, the change in cannabis, right, is so unique over the last 10 years to the positive, to me, much, much, much more so than any degree of negative. But to say there's no negative at all wouldn't be fair either. I don't want a 5-year-old finding a gummy, okay, and ending up in the ER, right? And I don't want a dog finding a gummy either and ending up in the vet ER, okay? Because they're both going to be about $5,000 bills. But the good news is dog will go home, child will go home. I call those overexposures. to cannabinoids, right? Overdose kills, overexposures cost money and are uncomfortable. Newbie to cannabis, of course, doesn't eat a basket full of brownies unless it's a movie plot, right? And then that ends up being a comedic, event. Instead of, Senator Simon going to the ER here in Florida, after his Delta 8 exposure. And we still don't know exactly what it was or how much it was. So there are cannabinoid overexposures that do. Shout out to Dr. Sophia Lynn Lassiter, who gave the ER-oriented lecture up at FMCCE this past weekend. Great job on that. Cannabis hyperemesis syndrome. Okay, we do see things like that, these days. We don't want young developing brains overusing cannabis, okay, and not developing into the superior human beings they can be. But on the other hand, for some young people, it becomes an essential part of their medicine, so we can't ignore that either. But that's why we need quality products, right? And quality, listen, just doesn't mean what they grow, okay? Quality means tested, labeled, okay? More research, okay? We want terpene labeling, okay? There was a great talk about flavonoids. Awesome, Tim. See, that's why when I don't have a guest, and I can't wait to hear Ruta's story this morning, and what she got hung up in. And I have a couple guests that I got to get in. Listen, this election season is going to be a long election season, so we'll have our chances. But right now, there's just still so much confusion. Like I said, people think that products, like I said, with the Amendment 3 will be able to be bought anywhere. We don't know yet where they're going to be able to be bought. We know the MMTCs are going to be able to sell cannabis products. We don't know how many more licenses are going to be awarded yet. Apparently, there's going to be 4 more, TIF, when we get to 900,000. So that'll make 26, I think, pending, with another 6, quote unquote, black farmer licenses yet to come. The point is, we're going to have more dispensaries. And of course, they'll all be able to get into the game. Why they're not putting out those licenses now for my medical patients? We're supposed to get 4 new licenses with every 100,000 patients. And we haven't gotten a new one out active, for many years. I like to say 2018, but it may have been since then. But the point is, they're backed up. They're backed up. It takes a year and a half or so for an MMTC to gear up to produce high quality cannabis products, right? And not much less medically, but even for that legal adult use market. So once again, another moving part. Okay, a lot of my patients are concerned about access. We know that there's access issues and problems now, but let me give you a good access point. Welcome to the Flowery here in Venice. Soft opening already, full opening tomorrow, right, Tiff? Yep. Right here on 41 in Venice. Used to be the Mel's Diner building, right next to Carrabba's and everything. So awesome. Patty and I stopped in. Beautiful, gorgeous little store. And I want to give a big shout out to really the entire Flowery team and Josephine, who represents them here locally for us. So that's an exciting thing. The more dispensaries, the better. Better access, better prices, better products. So I wanted to finish up the big 4 and make my point. So access, of course, would be key. So price, quality, believe it or not, and I'll leave everybody with this. Delivery is key. So we got to maintain delivery for medical. You won't see that in rec. Think about what people spend on a fast pass, Tiff, to go to Disney with their family. What is it, like $50 a day per person? Not for the ticket, but for the fast pass, okay? So you can only stand in line for 45 minutes instead of 2 hours and 45 minutes, okay? What the polling shows is that when states go from medical to legal adult use combined program, a lot of people keep their cards just for the fast pass because they don't want to wait in line. And if there's 20 rec people waiting to buy their products and you're the one that has the card, you get to go to the front of the line. So isn't that interesting? So those type of simple things that need to be worked on and thought about are factors. So my point is to everybody, thanks, Tim. So my point is to everybody, we know the moving parts. There's consequences that are intended that maybe are even expected. But then there's always consequences that are unintended and unexpected. So my point to everybody out there who's watching is that we are committed to making sure that we protect our medical program to the extent that we can. We're focused on it every day, paying very close attention. Also at the federal level, okay, we're going to fight to make sure that everything that we can becomes integrated to the positive and to the benefit of our patients. We're still early in the game of medical cannabis. The most exciting thing about the removal of 1 into 3 is the ability to do the research. That's awesome. We need that. But I think us boots on the ground medical cannabis practitioners will tell you that with the safety of cannabis, with the appropriate education of patients, that to wait for the science, so to speak, and the research, which is going to be very difficult to do in cannabis world, another entire green room. I think I'll invite Dr. Mike McKenzie in for that one, because he explains how difficult it is for pharma to get those double-blinded research studies on single molecules on patients with symptoms that are so obviously different. But the point is, we're early. So we're going to keep doing what we do with honesty and integrity, with education, with safety, not just for the patients, but for the public in general as we go through this campaign season. So listen, it's been a great green room. At least I enjoyed it. It was fantastically therapeutic for me, and I hope someone else learned something from it. I did want to drop one other thing, because I know I have about 10 more seconds. Believe it or not, I learned there was now a 4th recognized cannabis cultivar. Type 1 being high THC, type 2 being THC CBD combo, type 3 being that CBD, right, high cultivar or your hemp product. And now, believe it or not, type 4 is CBG dominant. And what I learned at FMCCE is that they're now starting to grow cultivars out west that do have 30% CBG content. Isn't that exciting? As we know, that's the mother of all cannabinoids. And I think we're all, once again, waiting to see what the research shows. So just big thumbs up positives as we go forth. We will look for you next week in the green room. We'll see what's going on at that time. We'll see if the governor has vetoed the hemp bill or not at that point. And we may know some other things a little bit more so than we know today. So we'll keep with the updates, and we'll see you next week.